Hello and welcome to the Unconscious Bias Reasons, Management and Prevention. So this will be presented by myself, Mohammed Ahmed, and Sean William McLaren. So the first one we're going to discuss is what is the unconscious bias? Well, it can be defined as making a subconscious judgment in favour or even disfavour towards a specific group of populations for an array of different reasons. So we'll be discussing that more throughout the slides. It is more important to note that this is an unintended bias towards the person, but the person may also be entirely unaware that they have this bias. But it does and have the ability to affect decisions from awarding marks to communications within a particular group. But it's more commonly associated towards the stereotyping, and it can affect any group or ethnicity. But furthermore, it's important to note that actually everybody holds to an extent a certain amount of unconscious bias. So here we have an image sort of showing the different types of unconscious bias that can exist. And it'd be a good idea when you do have the time to just sort of have a pause and have a think about what other potential unconscious biases could exist within others, if not even yourselves. So what causes this unconscious bias? Well, it's been evidenced that unconscious biases do develop during childhood and is often shown to emerge during the middle period of childhood. The dynamics of diversity within a social construct appears to affect the level of unconscious biases within those groups of populations. But it's also important to note that the media and education is evidented to play a fundamental role in the formation of both resistance and amplification of developed unconscious biases. Cultural differences often lead to misrepresentations of different diverse communities as well. But important to note that the unconscious bias is actually a biological design to the human mind to form mental patterns for automatic responses, but has also been referred to as System 1 within research. So the types of unconscious biases, there are many different types, but these are the more common types that we come across. Affinity biases, the halo effect, perception biases, confirmation biases, and groupthink. But of course, as is mentioned before, there's also ethnicity biases and other stereotypings. So how this affects assessment and feedback in higher education. Okay, so there was evidence from research conducted by Greaves that showed that most well-known unconscious biases do manifest itself in the form of ethnicity bias. It was actually shown that black and ethnic minorities were subjected to stereotyping, with black minorities under-assessed at assessment grading when compared to other counterparts. But furthermore, it appeared that Indian and Chinese students overall would be over-assessed. And this appeared to support the overall given negative stereotypes attached to these particular ethnic groups. So the effects are often unseen by peers alike due to the complex nature of higher education teaching, but also more specialised subjects do require specialised markers to fully understand these contexts. So other affecting factors for students and staff. Well, more importantly, students can feel a loss of motivation if they feel they've been discriminated for factors outside of their control, ethnicity, gender, sex, etc. It creates a barrier between learner and teaching. But more importantly, it can also have an effect with the relationship that forms between that sort of staff and learner. But also there are the economic implications, poor recommendations towards the institute, increased numbers of dropouts, and this has an economic effect. We also got increased pressure on the whole learning community to achieve good outcomes, to produce good learning environments, but also to produce engaging coursework for students. But also it's important to note that this engaging coursework also needs to be quite flexible in its learning approach to reduce the barrier. So how to limit and prevent the unconscious bias in managing and assessing feedbacks? So there are many factors used to engage and challenge the unconscious bias. Most importantly is higher education training and professional body regulation. But internal policy along with national legislation such as the Equalities Act are used to protect from both direct and indirect biases. As mentioned before, flexible approach to coursework. It's good to allow students with a diverse array of learning styles from specific learning needs to more adaptive learning to complete without the limitations of others. So it's important to not limit the ability that certain people may have, but also good professional engagement with the student body and peers to be as accessible as possible to the students, but also good set of guidelines made accessible to students with the required criteria set out clearly, allowing that flexibility. Influencing factors of the unconscious bias. Well, workplace pressure and stress, along with the expected deadlines, can enhance underlying unconscious biases within individuals. socio-economical factors and external responsibilities. But also, it's important to note that actually the current circumstances with COVID-19 at the moment has amplified that sort of increased pressure, because while working from home, workload for staff have actually gone up, and the change in learning style has also reflected in the difficulties for students. But also important to note that domestic problems and stress examples could even be from positive stretches, newborn babies, or even moving home. Mental health and burnout syndrome are factors. There are many others, and it'd be interesting to pause now and have a think about what other factors these could well be. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. A very good quote from Nelson Mandela is, "Education is the most powerful weapon in the world, which you can use to change the world." So in order to amplify and combat the hidden effects of the unconscious bias, we should be open to peer review of our own capacity in both teaching and learning, but also be open to discussion where improvements can be made. Engage in workshops that promote diversity and multicultural activities that can help break a barrier, and often found to play a foundationary part within the unconscious bias. Change the old style of learning to promote flexible learning and assessment and feedback to cater to a wider need of students, but also to provide teachers and learners with a platform to promote positive learning and development. And at this point, it'd be quite a good idea to pause the video and have a click on the image in the description below. For the link at the description below, to have a sort of watch of the video regarding the unconscious bias. Prevention approaches and methods. So second marking and external marking has proven strongly to reduce the unconscious bias, but this can be further enhanced by using a more anonymous marking system. So it could be replacing student ID and names on papers with barcodes. Limit open marking assignments to reduce the risk of difficult judgments for awarding marks. Random anonymous second marking to prevent conformity style unconscious biases, but also take breaks when marking large numbers of work. Unwind and relax, and this can reduce the stress effect. Speak up if you feel under pressure to mark all of the work allocated, and also to request further support. Attend regular unconscious bias workshops where possible, and remember, not everyone will write the same manner as yourself, but it does make the work any less. It does not make the work any less good, my apologies. Nor the quality or standard. It is important to be open-minded to others' writing and learning styles, and it all falls within diverse, flexible learning needs. But also allocate time for marking, where you can focus without external distractions that could affect the award you're marking. But I'd like to thank you for your engagement, but also please feel free to ask any questions you might have. And of course, finally, any questions? And please find attached a list of references.